Welcome to Tuesday night advanced lecture. Usually every 2 years, instead of following our usual topic on Tuesday evenings, every month we talk about one topic in great depth. We interrupted and we covered the World Championship games as they start. So hopefully this first session I'll be covering two of the games, first games 1 and 2, and the second session games 3 and 4. As you know, 2012 World Championship match has started between Viswanathan Anand and Boris Gelfand. These guys have played 4 games so far. Today was game 4. All 4 have been draws. Very exciting draws, though. Not so exciting. Game 3, definitely exciting one. So in this hour, I'll be covering the first game and second game. In the very first game, Anand, by draw, happened to have white. Gelfand was black, and he opened with d4. As you know, Anand has always been an e4 player, except in the last World Championship match against Topolov, he kept playing d4. So that was a big change of opening repertoire, and that took completely the Topolov's team by surprise. They just didn't expect Anand to play d4 every single game. And so far in this match, he's done that too. Of course, it's still not too late to switch to e4, but I doubt that will happen because with e4, chances are we're going to see a Sicilian defense. And Gelfand is one of the best players in the world with the Najdorf Sicilian. So I doubt it that we're going to see that. I don't think he wants to challenge Gelfand in Sicilian. Maybe in a rapid game, in case the score ends up 6-6, in rapids you might try those because both of these guys are extremely good, Anand with white side and Gelfand with black side. So Anand opened with d4 and black played knight f6. So white's opening was not so much a surprise, but black's was. Anand continued with c4, black played g6. So Anand is not sure if black is going to play Grunfeld or King's Indian. It's too early to tell. But black's response right now will tell. If black plays d6, we're going to have a King's Indian setup, and white could play classical with e4 and knight f3 or other lines. But if black plays d5, this is Grunfeld now. And that's what Gelfand played. So that was a little bit of a surprise that Gelfand, first game in over 10 years, he played Grunfeld. So these guys at that level trying to surprise each other with their openings. I'll read the commentary here by Malcolm Payne on WTWIC, the word in chess. He says, slight surprise and very combative. Anand played the Grunfeld in game 1 against Topolov in 2010 and was crushed after he forgot his opening preparation. So Anand decided to exchange Grunfeld is take, knight takes e4, usually knight takes c3. But Anand interjected knight f3 and bishop g7 and now took on d5. Shouldn't make much of a difference. Takes, knight takes. And the best thing that white gets in Grunfeld is the fact that he gets to play a nice move like e4 with tempo on the black knight. So black usually captures on c3 and pawn takes. So what type of pawn structure we have in the center right now? There are 5 types of pawn structure. I think Mike is the best qualified. Yes.
It's not fixed.
It is not fixed.
It could be mobile.
It is mobile. The definition of mobile pawn center is at least 2 pawns in the center. So we have a mobile pawn center. There are certain ways to play if you have the pawns. There are certain other ways to play if you are playing against the pawns. If you are the one with the pawns, you basically want to centralize your pieces and guard these 2 pawns and keep them next to each other for as long as possible. They call them pawn do. So the other side, who's playing against mobile pawn center, he wants to create obstacles and force one of these pawns to move. That's the first step. If not, it's just outright winning it. Forcing white to move one of these pawns and that create holes in the squares that the pawn used to control. So from this point on, we're going to see a lively battle. Black to play c5. Of the ways that this d4 square is a very critical square, and black tries to undermine this square as much as possible, already with the bishop on g7 and queen at d8, then with the pawn on c5, later on with the knight on c6. These are the ways that black undermines. And of course, if white wants to keep on defending and not advancing it, he could play bishop e3, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 attackers, 4 defenders. But at some point after black castles, he could play queen a5, rook d8, and then it would be a great deal of pressure on this square with a rook d8, bishop, knight, pawn. So white will feel a little bit embarrassed on that square. So there are several ways that chess theoreticians have come up with over the years in order to interrupt black's setup. One of them is this check, hoping to disrupt black's formation and piece regrouping. There are different ways that black could react, but probably the most sensible move is the one that black played in this game, and that is knight c6. The commentary on bishop e5 is, it's a surprise because it's thought to be fairly harmless, although Vichy has played it before. Vichy is a nonce nickname. I guess the Grunfeld might be a slight surprise too, so Vichy played it safe. Like I said, in the first few games of the World Championship matches, both sides are evaluating each other. They don't take any risk whatsoever, and they just want to, get the little fear out of their opponent out of the way. So black played knight c6, and what kind of pain is this knight now?
Absolute.
Absolute.
But if that knight was going to undermine d4, why not use bishop d7 and save the knight for pressure on d4? Why offer it to the bishop?
If bishop d7, then white retreats the bishop to where he wants to go in the first place, bishop e2. So this bishop was misplaced on d7 now, and black has no pressure along the d5.
And knight c6 wouldn't take the place of the queen to add pressure to d4?
Knight c6 is playable, but then white gets to play d5 if he wants to, or he can just play bishop e3 and guard everything. But this bishop on d7 is misplaced, and black still has to make another move to make it useful. So that was a playable move. But bishop e5 and knight c6, and now white made the sharp choice here, d5. Like I said, forcing the opponent to play the lines that they least expect is a big factor at high-level chess. Already, for example, bishop takes c3 is a mistake because bishop d2 and bishop takes a1 is a bigger mistake, queen takes, and black's rook at h8 and his knight on c6 are both hanging. So obviously it's not a good line for black. But he could play bishop c3, bishop d2, bishop takes d2 first. But still, the fact that this knight will have to move and doesn't have good squares, plus that black is going to miss his bishop on the king's side, black would have no piece on the king's side. And with a quick h4, h5, white almost checkmated him. As a matter of fact, that's what Anand tried in this game. So after d5, this was also a surprise. Usually white castles in this position instead of d5.
But isn't he pinning the knight to the king? It's an absolute pin.
It is, but absolute pin doesn't always win the piece if the opponent can attack the bishop immediately. So black could have played a6, and white would have retreated bishop to e2. That was one continuation. Another one was the one that he played, queen a5. He's attacking bishop, and of course hitting the c3. So hitting the c3 pawn, that means winning the rook. So white played rook b1, got the rook under to save a square and defended the bishop. Is black to play? He could have played bishop takes c3, and after bishop d2, there are several continuations. He could play a good safe move like a6. white can play bishop takes, knight, pawn takes, but this one is very vulnerable and eventually it's going to fall. So that was another continuation. He didn't take the pawn. He played a6, attacking the knight.
The bishop.
I mean the bishop, right. He must attack the bishop because otherwise he's just going to drop the knight on c6. So, and of course, the bishop a4, b5, and then move the knight. But at this time, Anand decided to take. Bishop takes, pawn takes. And since we're all in the opening phase of the game, tempo is very important. Quick development is very important. So Anand castled at this point. This pawn can be captured two different ways by black, but it's not worth defending. King safety is by far the most important principle in all phases of the game, especially opening. So white castle. And it's black to play, and because of black's compromised pawn formation, doubled and isolated, black is trying to grab as many pawns as possible. So played queen takes a2. And if white is not careful in some of these lines of Grunfeld, black's passed a pawn can become a real asset for him. So that's one of the things that he's eyeing. Queen takes a2. One of the super GMs, Sergei Karyakin, he said that he thought there were a number of alternatives here. He especially recommended either bishop g5 or bishop f4 for white. So that was another choice that they had. But white chose rook b2. He's forcing the black queen to make a decision where he's going to go. And the reasonable moves are either queen c4 or back to a5. So he went back to a5. And white to play. How do we assess this position? Black has the bishop pair, which is a permanent advantage. On the other hand, he's a little bit behind in development. He hasn't castled yet, and he has compromised pawn formations on the queen side. But he does have a passed a pawn, for what it's worth for the moment. On the other hand, white seems to have the initiative and more space.
Yeah, the question, if he went to queen a1, he wouldn't have done anything, right? He would have lost tempo, but he wouldn't have been trapped, would he?
Queen a1 almost gets trapped, because all white has to do is to get his queen out of the way. Let's say queen b3, and it's just a matter of moving the bishop, and black queen would be exposed to white's rook on f1. I mean, he could even do this next.
Oh, right.
So it's very risky to move. Obviously, white's going to move the queen out of the way, and then black queen is embarrassed. They played safe. He played queen a5. And after queen a5, white decided to play d6. Another interruptive move. One of the key things in openings is to keep your opponent from castling for as long as possible. And you want to entice your opponent with all kinds of pawn sacrifices and gambits and even pieces. So already black will have difficulties if he castles now because pawn takes e7, and that's a very hard pawn to get rid of. So black made an exclam move at this point that completely meets the demands of the position. You guys care to guess what the move was? So black's exclam move at this point after d6.
e6.
Rook a7.
e6, and after e6, e5, this pawn is going to be very powerful. So, exactly, rook a7. This stops d7, and on pawn takes pawn, always rook takes. This is the first exclam move by black here, which is not too hard to see really at the GM level or World Championship contenders. So it's white to play, and white Anand played bishop g5. Several commentators that criticized this move, they felt like bishop f4 was more to the point. This definitely looks sharper. So here, the commentary is, now Gelfand has a clear path to safety, or perhaps more, after rook d7. And the lines get really crazy here.
So is the bishop on f4 or g5?
had white played bishop f4, this would have been
Oh, this is the line.
This is the sharpest line in this game that never happened. And several players, after bishop f4, they gave this line, this position to the computers to see how chess engines evaluate this position. And the best that they came up with was rook d7, knight e5, attacking the rook, rook takes d6, queen c2. Yeah, I know, the moves are a bit complicated. White, for example, after queen c2 is threatening to fork the queen and rook now. And now, black's move is castles exclam. You see, black is going to give up the exchange, but in compensation, he has the bishop here, he's got a passed a pawn, and after knight takes here, this pawn takes, he will have connected rooks on the c and d files. So now on knight c4, queen takes c3, white to play bishop takes d6, winning the rook, e takes d6, queen takes c3, bishop takes c3, rook c2, bishop d4, and knight takes d6, bishop e6. Now, who do you think is better now?
Black.
Nobody.
Because of the passer on the
If I had to make a choice here, I would take black here. The fact that he's got the bishop here and a pass c and a pawns, it gives him more than enough compensation for the exchange that he's done now. He's got 3 pawns for the exchange that he's done. More than enough compensation.
2 pawns.
2, 4, 2, 6. Yeah, right, 2 pawns. But these are 3 pawns, which is really 3 pass pawn, which is really more like 2 because of double pawns on the c file. So I would say black has a very comfortable position in here. So this is what could have happened and could have made the game exciting. But maybe Anon saw this, and that's why he didn't play bishop f4 in the first place. So here white played bishop g5. And obviously black castles, bishop takes e7, or pawn takes is good for white. So black decided to take it now. He takes d6, queen takes d6, and it looks like black's position is critical because just optically this position looks horrible for black. But with a couple of good defensive moves on his part, black is pretty much equalizes the position. Starting with rook d7, queen takes c6, it gives up another pawn, but double pawns, they're probably not much value anyway.
Is this game 4?
This is game 1.
Oh.
And queen c7 now. So black has adequately defended the position. And chess engines at this point, they pretty much show close to 0-0. That means the position is dead equal. It can be a little bit tricky. Some people may disagree with chess engines analysis. For example, there was one IM that he disagreed with the evaluation. He said black has the bishop here, which is a permanent advantage, and it passed a pawn. So it seems that based on all these facts and the fact that white c pawn is about to fall too, black, if he had a choice, he would take black. So computers and evaluations are not the final word, but usually means a lot. So black's move is an indication that he wants to make sure he is playing safe in the first game against the current world champion. And looks like it's good for equality.
And
So-
what would have been wrong with him castling it instead of moving the queen to c2?
To c7?
Yeah. What would be wrong with castling at this point?
Okay. Instead of castling, white would have had a nice move here. What do you think white would have had here? How about rook b8? Bishop can't move because it's guarding the rook. So black sooner or later either have to play rook c7 or queen c7. And on either one of those, white could play queen a8, doubling on the rook. In the meantime, threatening to play bishop f4 and driving the rook away from protecting the c8 bishop. Of course, black could move the bishop now, and for example, bishop e6 or bishop g4, both safe. But it doesn't quite work because white plays rook takes rook, bishop takes, and bishop h6, and black is lost. So rook b8, attacking the bishop, was the real threat. And black recognized this, and he figured he needs to play it safer. He needs a queen around here also. That's why he played safe and played queen c7. And white didn't have anything more here, so he took bishop rook takes, bishop f4. He's still trying to make the most that he can out of this position and the fact that black hasn't castled yet. So rook went to b7, because that was one of the threats by white, rook b8 at some point. He challenged the open file, and white doesn't have much anymore, so he's holding on to his c-pawn with rook c2, and black finally castled, even though it loses his c-pawn after this fork. But the rook gets active and wins white's e-pawn. So played bishop d6, black played rook d8. Now he doesn't want to, he's trying, hoping not to give up this pawn, so played knight d2. And of course black would play bishop f8 and attack the bishop. Instead, black is playing more actively f5. Nice move. It looks like white is in a lose-lose situation, whether he takes the pawn or whether he let black take it. So taking the pawn is definitely out of question because it activates black's bishop very powerfully, and black may even win this game because of powerful bishops. And next move, black will play bishop to d3, rook moves, pawn c4, black holds on to his pawn, and black is dominating. So on f5, white played f3. And when you have the bishop here, you need open space. You need to open up lines. You don't need locked up pawn formation or anything. So trade pawns, open up the center as much as possible. He played pawn takes pawn. White took with a knight, and black played bishop f5. So now how would you assess the position? Would you say white still has a little bit more space or better, or black has equalized or maybe even slightly better because of his bishop pair?
I still like that wild a-pawn. To me, that a-pawn is the key.
It could be, could very well be. So on bishop f5, already people were talking about at any given moment, either one of them is going to offer a draw. And it happened. Black played bishop f5 and offered a draw. And now realizing that he doesn't have much in this position, he accepted it. He has respect for Gelfand, possibly trying to convert this position into a win.
What about knight? What about knight takes pawn?
Yeah, knight takes c5. Trade rooks.
Knight takes c5. It could happen. Bishop takes c2. Of course, that's one line. What if black goes, attacks the bishop?
So then rook to d2.
Okay.
Ah, but then the
The c-pawn would fall.
Ah.
One of the pawns, this c-pawn probably will fall anyway. And as the game goes on, it might be in black's favor because of the bishop here and past a-pawn. So white played it safe by accepting the draw. Plus, it's the first game, even though he's white and current world champion, he always has plenty of chances later on to come back. But they usually, almost always in the first few games, they go for a draw with each other. Unless one of the players is really combative and he wants to, like Topolov 2 years ago, and he managed to win the first game, but lost the match. So that was the first game.